Hello and welcome to everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So this particular section is all about the alchemy of life in its various forms and aspects, of which of course cookery and eating is part of that. And I also like to do a bit of foraging. And yesterday I went out and collected a wee little bunch of wild garlic, just enough to make some lovely cheese scones. So as a general rule with foraging, we do like to make sure that you only pick what you need and you don't take more, so that you leave some for not only everybody else in the human world, but everybody else who in the other realms as well, who like to eat wild garlic, including the plant itself that likes to survive. So I'm going to be showing you how to make sourdough cheese scones with wild garlic. Okay, so I'm just going to run you through the ingredients we're going to be using. So obviously, first of all, we have the wild garlic, which really, it's not a certain amount, it's just by feel, by experiment, by taste. So I will just be chopping up that little bunch and putting all of that in my cheese scones, but you can put in less, you can put in more. And then I will be using 200 grams of this lovely sourdough mother, and we will also be using 120 grams of milk, which is just under 120 millilitres of milk. Mine, I have taken a little bit out and put it in the pot over there so that I can brush the tops of my scones with it, and I've replaced what I've taken out, about a capful, with a little bit of cider vinegar to turn it into a buttermilk. But that's entirely up to you whether you want to buttermilk your milk or not. You can leave it as just plain milk. And then we have our plain flour, which is 230 grams of plain flour, which is about 8 ounces. I use a spelt flour. This is a really good all-round flour. It's more of a traditional flour. It's not been hybridized in order to up the gluten levels in it. So actually it makes a really good bread flour. It is quite strong, but it also makes a perfectly good plain flour and a very good flour if you add your raising agents to make your cakes and things. It's a really good all-round flour. I do prefer usually to have a mill that's slightly whiter than this one, but I haven't been able to get hold of that one. So we've got this slightly more wholemeal version here today. And then we have 125 grams of chopped cold butter, which I'm going to rub into the flour. And this is about 4 ounces of butter. And then we have our grated cheddar cheese. That's 150 grams of mature cheddar cheese. Again, that's about 5 ounces. And then we will also be adding our bicarbonate of soda, half a teaspoonful, and 1 teaspoonful of baking powder, and a teaspoonful of paprika, and half a teaspoonful of salt. And then you can see over here I've got some pumpkin seeds, which I'm going to dress the top of the scones with at the end, with a little bit of cheese and some milk. So that's everything you are going to need to make your sourdough cheese scones with wild garlic. Okay, so before we start putting ingredients together, I'm going to get the oven on so that it has time to warm up. Now I have a gas oven, so for me that is going to be about gas mark 7. Scones, especially cheese scones, like to be very hot, and so does sourdough, so that's about 220 degrees. So first of all, we are going to take our raising agents. So the bicarbonate of soda was half a teaspoonful. and I'm adding that to my flour. And half a teaspoonful of salt. This is sea salt, which I grind myself in a pestle and mortar. Just to keep the damp out. And then we want a teaspoonful of baking powder. So pretty much a normal scone mix really, even though you're also adding the sourdough. And then we have a teaspoonful of paprika. Of course you don't have to add paprika, you can always use maybe mustard powder or nothing at all if you prefer. And don't worry if you don't remember all of the numbers and figures, because I will also put this video up with a written recipe and method on my website, www.louisa-shawnee.com. So if you pop along to my website, you will be able to see it written down. So just mixing those together to get them evenly spread before adding my butter. So now I'm going to add the butter. So rubbing the butter in, this is between the thumb and the tips of the fingers, trying to keep all of the work on the tips of the fingers. This is because the tips of our fingers are cooler than the palms of our hands, so if we let the butter get into the palms of our hands, it gets a little bit too mushy, and like any good sort of crumble or pastry mix, it needs the butter to stay as cool as possible. So you can always tell whether you're doing it right, because there should be very little flour on the palms of your hands. Okay, so as you can see, those are all rubbed in nicely. The key to making a good scone or any sort of pastry or crumble where you rub the flour and butter together is not to overwork it. So it doesn't matter if you have a few little lumps in there, that's fine. So now I am going to add the cheese. Now again here, you can save a little bit for putting on the top, or if you like me, your scones to be really cheesy, you can grate a little bit more for that. So I'm going to put all of mine in and grate a little bit more for the top later. And I'm also at this point going to add in my wild garlic, which I have already chopped. And it smells delicious. Right, so the rain's just beginning, you'll probably hear that over my head. So just lightly mixing that in. There we are. So now I want to add my buttermilk to my sourdough and mix that in a little bit. So just stirring that around. So buttermilk is, it's sort of like just that pre-yogurt phase, which is why adding a little bit of vinegar in just as that starts to turn the milk. It slightly sours it, if you like, so it complements the sourdough quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is not quite add all of this in, just in case I don't need so much moisture, and then I can always put more in if the dough's feeling a little dry. So you want to mix this in with the sourdough, just to sort of, because the sourdough, like any sort of yeast, is quite stringy, likes to clag to itself. So if you mix it with your liquid you're adding first, then it makes it easier to get an even spread of it throughout your dry mixture. Adding that into my dry mixture. And this is where your hands get very messy, because really you need to do this by hand. So just working around, picking up all of the dry ingredients. It's coming together nicely now. So we didn't need all of that buttermilk. I have to think that's probably because I weighed out too much. I did give you the right amount. So there we are. Okay, so now we're going to just gently work the dough a little, not too much. You don't want to overwork the scone dough, and then we're going to shape it. Now, I like to cut my scones into more sort of squares than use a pastry cutter, but obviously if you wish to use a pastry cutter, there's absolutely no problem in doing that. So I'm just making mine into a nice little rectangle so that I can cut it into squares. Leaving the dough still quite thick, probably about 1/4 of an inch, something like that. And I'm going to cut that into eight. As easy as that, and then we transfer them to a baking tray. So now it's time to dress the scones. A little bit of milk. Paint that onto the surface of the scone. A little bit of cheese. Now, I must admit, I do try to make sure that I don't have trails of cheese on my baking paper, because that will burn. So again, entirely up to you how much cheese you put on the top. I like my cheesy scones to be cheesy. And you can use any cheese you like. I did notice a friend of mine, the Little Forager's Kitchen, did a cheese scone with wild garlic, and she used feta cheese. You'll find her on Instagram. And then I'm just going to put some pumpkin seeds, and I just like to use them as a decoration. Again, entirely up to you what you choose to put on them, if anything at all. So these are then going to go in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes. So I should put the timer on for 15 minutes and then come and check them. So there we are. After about 20 minutes, you have your lovely cheesy scones, and I am going to enjoy mine with a good knob of English butter. For the full recipe and method details, go along to my website www.louisa-shawnee.com. You can find the link in my profile, and it will also be at the end of this video. So look forward to seeing you again, and do subscribe to my channel, and if you would like updates on all the various things that I make and do, then do pop along to my website and sign up for my regular newsletter. Take care now. Blessings to you all. Thank you very much for watching.